Hello, today's In the Hoop project is this round key fob with a quarter holder slot, so you can slide a quarter in there. Now this is a blank design so that you can use a decorative vinyl, or if you prefer you can go ahead and add a design of your choice to the key fob. So the key fob has a fairly short loop. It gives it a little more streamlined design here, and in order to accomplish that we'll actually stitch that loop closed as part of the design process, and I'll go over that when we get to it. So let's get started. As usual, I recommend that you print the thread guide. This is going to tell you what's going on in each run and then any actions you need to take, and that will help you decide what color you want for each run as well. You should also print out the instructions. They're going to give you an overview, the file name, materials, and then some tips, and then detailed step-by-step instructions, and those actually have little check boxes to help you keep track of where you are while you're stitching the design. So for materials, I've got a 2.5 by 4 1/4 inch piece of vinyl for the front, 2.5 and just over 2.5 for the back. Now if your vinyl gets wrinkles in it, sometimes it gets folded, you get some wrinkles built up in there, you can iron it, but you need to turn it over and iron from the back, and you need to make sure you use a low temperature iron. If not, then this is what happens. If you catch that edge, it's gonna, and you can, even with your ironing from the back, if you're not careful, you can catch the edge and melt it. So use a lower temp iron from the back. Also, if your vinyl has a design on it, you want to make sure where that design is going to be positioned on your key fob, so you might need to cut the fabric a little bit larger to allow positioning of the design. Of course, you'll need a key ring. I'll use the rotary scissors. I'll also use these little curved scissors for the cutting out the buttonhole. I use the larger ones to cut the edge, some 505 to secure things in place. That's a temporary adhesive. And I actually like this little screwdriver for making sure the loop is open, the quarter section is open, and it also is great for pulling that ring apart to put the key ring on the design. I already have some stabilizer in my hoop. This is plain old regular tearaway, no sticky on it, no nothing, just plain tearaway. And I've also got a little piece of tape on the side of my hoop so I can keep track of which way it goes in my machine when I take it in and out. So let's get started. Actually, before we get started, if you have a multi-needle, you really want to go into the edit mode, and you want to check the little color thingy here, and that's going to let you change the colors as desired and to add any stops so that you can take the action, such as adding the fabric or trimming the buttonhole. If you've got a single needle, it's going to stop after each run for you. So let's go ahead and get started. This is going to show us where the design will be stitched, and we'll stop after this to place the vinyl. Our design has been stitched in place, or our placement guide has been stitched in place. So I'm going to bring that over here. I already put a little 505 on the back of this, and I'm just going to drop this right over there, and I can lift up. Now, one thing that you see, these two lines, this one is going to be the cut above this line, and that one's going to be the one I fold that loop on. So those are just placement guides. Your fabric goes over this inner, or that closed shape there. So we're going to put that there, and you can just lift up those edges a little bit to check your placement. Lift up, make sure we got enough room. Yes, so that's good. You can also turn this over, and it's a little hard to see, but if you can just see that stitched line, and you can see that there's material on either side of it. So we're going to return this to the machine, and it's going to stitch this in place and stitch the buttonhole, and then we're going to stop it again. So the buttonhole has been stitched, and what I'm going to do now is, if you wanted to just leave it blank, that would be fine, or if you had a design of your own, you add it with software, this would be the point to add it, but I'm going to add some letters to this. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel the embroidery, and I'm going to delete this design out of the stitching, and I'm going to go into text, and we're going to pick I'm going to go with the fancy W there. I wanted this. So I'm going to use that design. I'm going to put that in there right now. Now I'm going to do one more thing here. If you notice, right now it's centered right there, and I want it centered more like about there. So I'm going to use the little buttons right here to reposition it. And I'm going to slide it until that. So now if you look now, that little red dot you can see has moved, and that's going to be the, actually what I think I want it down just a hair more. So I think that's about good for where I want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and go into sewing, and I've already put the thread I wanted for that on my number 1 needle. So I'm going to close this, and we're going to stitch that in place, and then we'll stop. Okay, our initial has been stitched, so I'm going to go ahead and go back in here now. So I'm going to say OK. We're going to delete this, and we're going to go back into our designs, and we're going to reopen that design that we were on and set that. And because I'm advancing just to the last run, I'm not going to worry about setting colors. I'm just going to go into my little plus minus button, and I'm going to use the little thing that looks like the thread spool, and we could either go forward 3 or back 1. So I'm just going to go back 1, and I'm going to close that, and I want to, it wants to use spool number 4. I'm going to use this little gizmo here, like the magic wand, and I'm going to tell it I want it to use 5. So it's going to use 5 this time, which is the one I was using before, and we'll finish, actually we'll cut our buttonhole open, then we'll finish stitching everything. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to take my rotary cutter, and I'm just going to press that down right there in the center. I'm not going to cut too far because I'll cut the circle there, and then I'm going to take this and I'm going to be cutting above this line. So I'm just going to kind of go like that, and I'm going to go across the top there. Now I can take my little scissors and I can finish opening this area. Be careful that you don't cut the buttonhole. If you should cut the buttonhole, take it back to your machine before you add the back. Go back to that run which had the buttonhole in it, stitch the buttonhole again, and then take it off and finish trimming things and add the back. So we've got this started here, and we can leave this a little bit large. It doesn't really matter. We'll trim that down some when we finish cutting it. And I like these little scissors because you can kind of turn them and cut either way. So that's good. I actually want, yeah, that's enough. I just stay reasonably above that line. And maybe we'll get a little closer on this side. Yeah, that's good. And I'm going to cut this just a little bit across the top. I only want about 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch even off that top there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over, and before I put things on, I'm going to trim any of those jump stitches or those tails off the back, especially those near the edge, so they don't get caught or show. And now I'm going to fold across this. Remember I had that second line stitched in there? That was the fold line. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of fold right across there. And as I'm folding, I want to kind of match up those stitches with the other stitches so that it'll be nice and neat when I'm done. And I can actually trim a little more off of that. You don't want that hanging down too far into the buttonhole. So we just cut off a little more there. That's good now. And so what I'm going to do is I've actually made a little template. I just took a piece of paper and I just cut a little square in it. And that lets me control where this goes and minimize getting it on my hoop and other things. Where the temporary 505 that I'm about to spray. So I need to spray this so that this loop will stay down and the backing will stay on. So I really want to spray kind of like, just like, you know, right through there. So that's why we'll use this little guy here. And I can just give a nice spritz, and like I said, that way it hasn't gone all over the place. Now I'm going to refold on that line, and again, I'm going to kind of match up those stitches. You can see I've got the stitches so that they're lined up, and that'll help keep that even. And I'm going to press that down, and then I'm going to take my piece for the backing, and I'm going to put that over it. And again, I'm just going to lift up a little bit, make sure I've got some space down there, reasonably even from side to side. And I'm going to press lightly there. I don't want to press too hard because it'll push it through the hoop. I'm going to turn it over. And now I can really press, you know, since the stabilizer is now on the table and I won't be popping anything out. So we've got that, and I think I did a good job centering that W there. So we're going to take this back to our sewing machine. Now be real careful when you're putting this in that you don't knock the vinyl off the back on the bottom of your machine as you're sliding it in place. So gently slide it into place. Watch that that's not, you know, caught on anything. And then we're going to go ahead and stitch that last run, which is going to secure the front and back together, and then we'll trim things. All right, our design has finished stitching. Thank you, sweetheart. We can bring it back over to our work surface. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and pop it out of the hoop. And we're going to cut around those outer edges. And I always like to just cut that top area off first. Now I like my large scissors for this. Because this is a round design, I try and make as long of a cut as I can to try and keep it straight. And you're just going to try and trim about 1/8 of an inch or so around outside of that edge. And just keep turning it as you trim. Try and keep trimming and turning at a constant rate, and you can follow that edge. Okay, now the last thing we need to do, well, actually two things. Oh, you know, I forgot to change my bobbin thread. You should really remember, if I was reading my instructions, I would have remembered. That back run, the bobbin thread is visible. So if you have a matching bobbin thread or something that's a little closer, you might want to change your bobbin thread for that last run. Now I'm just going to bend that flap a little bit so that I can trim across the top of this and get that top edge there below the loop trimmed. Now this is where your little screwdriver comes in handy. You can put it in there, make sure that loop is open. It's also nice for tucking down in there because sometimes with the 505 this can get a little bit stuck together, so that'll help open that up. And then I'm going to take it and I'm going to just pop it in between the two pieces there, and it makes it real easy to put your key ring on. If I can get my loop back open. Okay, let's try this again and I'll show you how easy it is. So it just slides right, oops, there we go. That'll just slide right in there, and then just move your key ring or your screwdriver a little bit and move that around. Actually, you can move it back to the other side and then just kind of push it along. And we've got our key ring on our key fob. We've got an initial added to the blank design, and the slot for our quarter is ready to go. So I hope you've enjoyed today's In the Hoop project. Round key fob with a blank. You can easily add your own design to it. If so, please like and share. Also, please subscribe to this channel for more In the Hoop project and embroidery basics from LLH Embroidery. Thanks and happy stitching.